Okay, I'm trying to present and it's not showing up, huh? Dude. Let me try again. There we go.
Yep.
Okay. We have anything on our weekly routine we need to do?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say for 1.13 release manager, John and myself has been working with Elizabeth on her first PR. We do expect to be merged pretty soon, so I think she'll be qualified to be a release manager. I don't know if there's any other volunteers. Certainly, we probably need somebody more experienced to guide her as well.
But do you need a volunteer, Lynn? What are you asking for?
No. I was just it's probably good to ask other volunteer for the 1.13 release manager because she's new, right? I think she'll be qualified, but it's good to have experienced release manager work with her on the release.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna have to keep looking for people then.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys said. Google had somebody on 112, but there were enough people on 112 release manager.
Louis, did we have someone in mind for 113? Do you know?
Not yet. There's supposed to be a schedule, actually, so people could sign up several releases in advance, so we didn't keep doing this.
Can we
have a little bit.
Yeah, can we put the schedule somewhere here too?
Yeah, there was a spreadsheet. Maybe should I here? It actually came up in steering.
Yeah, it might be in steering, so it's not open, but I don't see why it shouldn't be here.
I found a spreadsheet that has people through 111 and nothing past that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the one you're talking about, Louis. It's your doc, your spreadsheet is Istio release manager schedule.
Yeah, that was just me backfilling all the ones that had happened. Okay. But yes, let's link that doc here and then try and get as many slots filled in, even if they don't have names. We can put the names next to them.
Louis, you should, if you want to use that spreadsheet, you should move it over into the Istio drive. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, move that.
Okay, I'll let you do that. Okay, should we get started on roadmaps?
Yep.
Steve, do you want to present, or do you want me to present that doc?
You can go and present.
I have to unshare and reshare to do so. Okay.
All right.
Take it away, Steve.
The roadmap is relatively small. I didn't really get a chance to go triage and just like list critical bugs here. I'm not really sure if they were appropriate to put in here, but the main things I want to get done are we're still waiting for auth-z from the gRPC side, and it's a pretty critical feature to be able to actually call proxyless gRPC alpha. DNS proxying, we added a few tests in the last release, and last release also gave a couple features that we had for allowing cross-cluster headless services and stateful sets for MultiCluster to marinate, and we had like 3 or 4 different users reach out asking whether or not that was possible, and I'm just like, yeah, just turn on the feature flag, and they seem to have success with it, so I think it should be ready for beta. The workload group CRD doesn't really seem to have any new things that we really want to put into it. It's been out for several releases now, so I want to promote that to beta. And so that's it for feature promotions. One thing that's kind of been in the backlog that I haven't really prioritized is EKS and AWS tend to use host names for their external load balancers. And there are a ton of users of multi-network who have reached out and are using some pretty weird hacks to support this. So I want to add first-class support to Istio. There's like several options in this doc for how to do that, and I just want to get any basic version of it working because it would be better than current state. One of the biggest things for the release will be actually implementing HBone within Istio. Yuchen said that it is a work in progress within Envoy and should be ready for us to actually program the control plane relatively soon. Last release, we merged code to.
Is the target to get that into like experimental?
Yes, yeah. I should know.
Okay.
We have code that handles using endpoint slices instead of endpoint for Istio's main service discovery or endpoint discovery. So this will just switch Istio to automatically read those instead of endpoints if using Kubernetes 121 or greater. We actually already have the code to do this, but we wanted to actually give it time to be tested, and it merged pretty late in the cycle for 112. And then Rama and Aditya said that they want to try to get Delta XDS to alpha quality and continue to enhance the cluster, the CDS support for that. But that's all I have.
So Stephen, the proxyless stuff, why do we think we need to wait for auth-z to go to alpha? Because I mean, it is a feature, like auth-z is specifically a feature, right? We could separate them.
This came out of conversations with Costin. I mean, it could be argued that it's ready now. Right now, we have MTLS support and a few different load balancing policies, and that's all.
So it's a bit. So first of all, we don't have to wait because it's ready. We just need to test it. And it's very hard. I mean, you have MTLS if you have encryption, but you don't have any authorization. You don't get too much security. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to implement it. The application would have to implement it itself, which some applications do.
In reality, no application knows how to parse our X forward certificate, client certificate, which is what we basically get. Or actually, you don't even get that. It's we don't have any example. I mean, it's and it's ready. I mean, the code was supposed to be ready, before the previous release, but it just slipped a bit. And for 113, we have plenty of time to just use it and use our own API instead of forcing users to authenticate themselves.
Okay.
I mean, it's so close that it's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, if it's ready to go, then that's fine.
According to gRPC team, I mean, it's in the with traffic directory is ready, so it's we just need to verify that it works for us as well.
Okay.
Have we got some feedback on the DNS proxy feature? I'm just curious. Sorry, not the DNS proxy. Proxyless gRPC feature.
Yeah, I've had a handful of people reach out to me on Slack asking about it, and several have tried out the demo and are just asking for when we will add more support for things like auth-z.
Got it. Awesome. Any issues in GitHub for things that didn't work or people asking for features?
There's a slight issue where some of the changes that we made to support the latest gRPC version break older gRPC clients. Their XDS implementations seem to have kind of switched over slightly in one area, so there's a chance we need to conditionally send different config based on the version, but I'm trying to kind of work with the gRPC team to figure out if that's actually the case.
Awesome. No, good work, Steven. This is, I'm glad that folks are using it and giving feedback.
Given the performance, I mean, it will be hard to believe when it moves to, alpha and beta, it will not be very popular.
I think the future, sorry, I was just going to say, I think the future promotion items, Stephen, you had on your list makes a lot of sense. I do have a question on the host-based load balancer for multi-network. I think that's also a very important gap we have. I was just wondering your bandwidth as far as like you owned many of things on the list. What's your take on, having that actually landed on 113 for that host name-based load balancer?
I already have like some, probably broken by now prototypes of it. So it's not like I'd be starting from scratch. And then a lot of the other items on this roadmap are relatively small or were already started.
I see. So which option did you land with? Because I actually looked at the doc this morning. I didn't recall you specify which option you landed.
The version before that I have like partially implemented is like resolving in the control plane, which isn't great, but it's essentially what users are doing today with their own custom tools. But I would like to experiment with trying to just like switch clusters over to strict DNS, and then if that doesn't work, try doing something with aggregate cluster.
Okay, that makes sense. The control plane is a safer path, at least, what other people are using automation today.
Yeah, after I do some experimentation, I plan on bringing this back to working groups to try to get consensus.
Is doing it in the agent a possibility, or that's too much of work?
There was some debate about it last time, but I don't know if, I guess there's only 2 items on the agenda for TOC, so maybe we do have time to talk about it. It sounded like that would require us actually deserializing the EDS responses and then reserializing them, which didn't sound super optimal. But yeah, it is possible.
I see. Yeah.
I think we would prefer not to do that, right, Niraj?
Yeah. No, that will be a lot of overhead, especially its EDS changes frequently. Yeah.
Especially like look at Delta XDS, right?
Yeah.
Do we have any idea of the frequency of the IP might change for hostname based load balancer? Is it like 2 minutes or 5 or 30?
It's not often.
It's cloud provider dependent anyways, right?
And so that's why I was kind of favoring the control plane solution. It's pretty simple, and you can just set a time delay relatively reasonable to do the refresh.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for already starting implementation. I think this is definitely a big gap.
Any other questions on the roadmap, or is there anything that people think is missing?
Are there things that, are there other things that are sort of intentionally we're not doing? Do you have a list of, what is not in scope for this release? But I see that we have one thing in future, but I'm wondering if there's other things.
Um,
Go ahead, Stephen.
I know you go ahead.
So I see Delta XDS on here. The obvious longer term thing is on XDS on demand, but that's a performance thing. I actually had the question here about Delta XDS. What is the goal of what we're trying to do with Delta XDS functionally for this release?
For this release, get CDS pretty much working, and then make sure that the way that they have other XDS types implemented, it's pretty much the item from 112. There was just no work on it. Yeah, so like CDS should actually have an improvement over traditional, and then right now other types I think are slightly worse than like state of the world XDS.
I think one goal may be that, you know, in 1.13, you could actually turn on Delta XDS and things would work fine. I mean, it's alpha, so I wouldn't say production, but you know, if you did turn it on in production, then your cluster wouldn't explode.
That's
And
still not
what,
really a functional goal, right?
yeah, say what benefit would you get as a user if you turn it on?
Well, it works fine, and then there's also the optimizations that we get. So
Less CPU, more
yeah,
you know, endpoints per Istio server per CPU,
Okay.
less memory, less network traffic,
All right,
So
so
with
it's
one, go ahead.
scale.
it's a performance and scale thing. So then we should just like we should have some measurement criteria, right?
What about less memory in the proxy itself? That seems to be the, if it is served by this, then that's kind of the most important one. Any optimization in theory itself are sort of kind of
this will not improve proxy memory.
To a bit it does. I mean, you get fewer large objects or fewer large allocation every time there is a push. So there is a bit.
Yeah,
less
you
work
might
on
not get a
point.
spike, maybe. I doubt it will have a big impact, but you're right. It could have a small impact. If we do the incremental stuff, obviously, that's when we'll get the big improvements there.
right.
Yeah, on demand is a big elephant.
Yeah,
And
the
is the-
biggest thing that we've seen actually in terms of metric that changes is the amount of just like network traffic. That is a far bigger indication of that metric changes far more than CPU and the control plane or even on Envoy.
Okay, so we would expect to see a marginal CPU improvement in Envoy, and maybe some spike flattening, but this is really an incremental step towards incremental, which yields the real gains.
Which are also handled by sidecar and isolation. So it's not really burning.
Sure. Okay.
What is the plan for incremental? When is that? Like, are we going to try and get that alpha in 114, or is that farther off?
I think it's going to be coupled with HBone.
Why? Is it a couple of days?
It's a big change.
HBone is a large change to the listener cluster structure.
So we're going to wait till after we get HBone done?
It would be a lot to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
It would be a lot of risk.
Okay.
And this also helps the work because the HBone everything is on demand is over the RDS HTTP paths. While with the current stack, it's basically LDS, and I mean we have more things to do on demand. It's a far smaller surface basically.
So is on demand going to require HBone, or is it more that we don't want to do both at the same time?
I don't think it technically requires it, but I think it gets easier / better with HBone.
Okay.
HBone should, right? Again, we have to measure, have CPU benefits. But it also has just aggregate XDS complexity benefits.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, to do both at once would be a lot of, right?
Yeah, no, that makes
number of people.
We shouldn't do them at the same time. We should just, but it means we need to get HBone done.
And also
Okay.
for stability, it's a very good thing to keep the current code as stable as possible and focus, any kind of experimental stuff in the HBone part, which is a bit more. So it may slow down HBone a bit, but the people will benefit from the stability of the core existing deprecated or legacy code.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, seems like we don't have any other questions.
So we switch over
Are there
to-
other things that you were curious about, Sven, that were not on the roadmap?
I didn't know what to be curious about, so that's why I was asking what are the things we're explicitly not doing? Because like this looks like a good list, but are there things that if I saw them, I'd be like, oh no, that's a higher priority. So I don't know, so that's why.
There is one which is also coupled with HBone, which is support for stateful sets with multi-network, which is simply impossible today.
Is that, do we have people asking for that?
Well,
Yeah.
Yes, and
Okay.
John, are there any gateway API related things that should be captured here?
I don't
API
think
state
so.
progression.
I mean, as they make changes, we keep up with them. But there's nothing burning that's not going on.
And all the proxy scheduling stuff coupled with that we're happy with the state of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure as we get feedback and usage, we'll improve on it. But the core of it's out there. Basically, just waiting for people to try it out and tell us what's wrong with it, I guess.
So is there a feature progression requirement?
I think it's kind of blocked by the API itself. So if and when they go to beta, which might happen in 1.13 timeframe actually, so maybe we should track it here. I think it would be good for us to go beta at the same time. If it doesn't work out, then one release afterwards. But we can't go beta until they do. So.
The other feature that we can think about is a better API experience around egress. We've had that on the roadmap off and on for a while. Again, that might actually be something coupled with HBone.
Is it? Because I mean, the better experience is to send everything to Egress gateway, right?
Everything that's not declared within the API set to make it go through egress, yes.
which we kind of have, is just not documented pretty well.
Right, that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
Right, like some of the stuff John has done around automating the gateway lifecycle, like we would also want to automate those use cases more cleanly.
I think it would be great to put it on the list for 1.13 even. I mean, just document and add some testing for Shiran's, send everything to egress. And treat it as alpha, for example.
Yeah, we just got to make sure the UX, the API for that makes sense to users.
Yeah, I don't know if that's I mean, it may be short term, but I don't know if that's the right path for long term, because that means that you have to, like, in order to use egress in a sane way, you need to not have a service defined, which means you lose a bunch of other things like telemetry, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need a holistic review of the state of egress, I think.
Agreed.
But it will be a set of options, and one option is to set everything that doesn't have, and then we probably add another option to set. It's incremental. It doesn't have to be one at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think we have to negotiate the UX here.
Yeah.
I think we would all agree that there's some work needed here. Okay.
Just curious on the protocol. Lynn, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll go after.
Yeah. I was curious on the protocol supports from Envoy if any of them have progressed, and do we need to do something? I have not been following UDP if that has further stabilized.
John, is there a UDP route API yet in the gateway spec?
Yes. There is. But I think our bigger issue is the redirection.
Right.
Yeah.
And
No, we could
don't
add it
have
at a
to-
gateway, but it's why? It's like there's not. It seems odd to have it only at a gateway. We do have HTTP 3 at the gateway because then we terminate it and forward HTTP 2. But for just
Hang on.
UDP, it's a bit odd.
When you say you have an issue with redirection, you're talking about when we move to Edgebone, or?
No, I mean with UDP. I don't think we have a way to get the original source of the traffic for UDP like we do for TCP.
Right. So Neeraj, our
Original
tunneling protocol is not
yeah.
designed for UDP.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, currently now I get it. The IP tables magic doesn't really work there.
eBPF would work.
Oh God. How would we do?
Or-
How are we going to do UDP over MTLS?
Well, that's Cubone, and I mean, it's not that's a known problem. I mean, it's
Right. So
it's
like
mask
we
and-
have to decide, right? Either like we could do UDP routing at Ingress without MTLS to the back end. That would be a pretty incremental feature, right?
But that we know how to do. That we know how to do. I mean, it's not a problem. The problem is how to get the original source when you capture on the sidecar. That really is the thing we don't have a solution for, or we don't know how to do it. eBPF, a different CNI where you create a second V8 pair, and then you can get it from on the second one. There are ways, but
Yeah. Okay. Do we know if the requirement is Ingress or sidecar?
And it will be good to start with Ingress there if we can.
even if it's Ingress, you will not get security because again, if we don't have capture on the sidecar, we cannot add the encryption to it. One thing that is actually possible is to have a white box mode where you have a dedicated UDP and you send to localhost, like we do it with TCP Whitebox. And then we can do that and while we implement the encryption with mask. But that's probably what really this seems the future.
Yeah, I think you have jumped quite a few things in between to get to mask.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. We're going down a rabbit hole, obviously, here with UDP.
Yeah.
If somebody, so hopefully there are feature requests tracked in GitHub for UDP, and hopefully we can discern from those whether the requirement is Ingress or sidecar. If we can't, all right, well, one, if we don't have any feature requests for it, then it probably shouldn't be a priority. Does anybody have any context on any outstanding feature requests from users on UDP? Or is it just hand wavy at this point?
For telcos and all, it has always come up. I mean, and then they want it everywhere. But
right. I mean, mask is our strategic solution for this, right, with HBone.
Yep.
And we can do UDP over HBone, but it would take some work to get that into Envoy.
How can you do that over Edgebone without mask?
HBone is mask, just right. The proposed implementation is over HTTP.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
There's no difference between those things.
Sure.
There is a subtle difference. You can drop some stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, the one obvious difference is it's lossless UDP.
Yeah.
When we get it.
Okay, if we're done with this topic, Yeah, since Savan, you were asking what's missing.
I think we had a good discussion of what's missing, so that's good. Yes.
Yeah, but I want to add one more thing. So a couple of weeks ago, do you guys recall the HPE team was presenting to the networking working group on the spell agent integration? And throughout that discussion, right, we kind of concluded that there's only one change we needed in Istio, which is to enable somebody else, which could be spell agent, as the SDS provider. So it could be a global configuration to Istio. So I'm actually not sure which timeline, because I never heard the HP come back to, which timeline they are going to implement this integration. But we're interested to explore that configuration and make it available to Istio user so that they can configure their SDS provider in the case they want to be different than the Istio agent.
SDS, Security Discovery Service?
Well, we had two recommendations, Lynn. One was to allow for a different SDS endpoint as long as it was local and over UDS, or a file mount.
I'm sorry, I missed the last few words.
Or a file mount, a rotated file mount, which is actually the preferred solution. And I think it's a work in progress, right? Jimmy is working with the HPE folks. Is that right?
Yeah, it seems that it's moving forward pretty well.
Okay, so is that work going to land in 113? I guess that's my next question. Is there any outlook, because we're talking about what's missing?
Whenever Spire is ready to land, nobody in our, when we're just helping them.
Okay, but the Istio configuration change, we're interested to see if we can help out on that. Who should I follow up on that?
I think just check with Jimmy.
Is that Jimmy? Okay.
I'm working with them as well. Right now, the conclusion is probably there will be no change needed whatsoever. So it will be just completely automated. Well, there will be some patch to proxy agent that they will provide, but that's it. No Istio or other major changes.
But you would need to configure who is your SDS provider, no?
No, we reached the conclusion, or at least I hope we reach that it's completely automatic. I mean, if you have the CNI plugin that creates the UDS socket, agent will detect it and say, hey, I have this SDS socket created by CNI, let's use it. Don't do anything else. So user will not have to configure anything globally or anywhere. Just if they install SDS support and Spire, they use it. Otherwise, they don't.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so Carsten, I will follow up with you and Jimmy offline. If there's no change in Istio, that's even idea, if we can automatically detect that.
That's a plan. If we fail to, for whatever reason, then we'll fall back to having the configuration, but that's what I'm trying to achieve, to not have to add yet another setting. I mean, there is a setting, you install the Spire. You express your intent to use it by installing it.
Right, and that can be determined by whether the agent is on the node.
It has a socket, yeah. If we find a socket, we use it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can you guys sync up offline?
Yeah, we'll take it offline, but it's good to know, the direction at the moment is maybe no change for us.
Okay. Who's next?
All right, should we switch to environments?
Yep.
Sam is supposed to be presenting. Sam, do you want me to present, or do you want to?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I will click the button. Let's see.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, cool. Let's just start on feature promotions. So first thing is revision tags. We actually had the same exact item on our 112 roadmap, and we were going to kind of have a better story for Helm support, and the proposal kind of didn't make it anywhere, so we're going to try again for 113 to get this officially promoted to alpha. Helm, we're looking at beta. For 113, we just moved to like official Helm repos and stuff. So hopefully things will stabilize a little bit more, and we're looking at beta there. For MultiCluster, Stephen has been working a lot on making it stable. There are a few outstanding items with respect to like offboarding clusters from a mesh that kind of need better testing and maybe more attention on the UX there. So that's kind of the remaining work. MCS, Nathan's been working on getting that to alpha. So that's the target for 113. Any questions on the feature promotions?
And if I remember, MultiCluster, that was just for primary, right?
I believe.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. One thing I did also want to add is that I want to try to get like the stable promotion does kind of list that we want to have solid performance numbers. And with MultiCluster, one thing we don't have is kind of control plane performance numbers as you scale up a number of clusters. Because you know, it's going to be every cluster has to read every other cluster's endpoint in that. So the service registry can get quite large.
We don't really have any way around that though, right?
No, but I just want to measure it for some number of services and endpoints per cluster.
Well, we do measure, I mean, the maximum Istio can handle, and it doesn't matter if it's coming from one cluster or 100 clusters, mostly.
Yeah, it's sort of a maximum number of endpoints in the entire mesh, regardless of, clusters. Do we publish that somewhere, like the maximum or the scaling factors or anything in our docs?
I don't think we publish, but I don't think you can reach the max because you'll hit other problems before. So we with the memory we have, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to take that on, Stephen, as part of getting MultiCluster to stable.
Okay, I thought there was some prior stuff for me to build on, I assumed. So yeah, maybe not.
It could be a never-ending effort to try to figure all that out.
Okay.
Good, Sam.
Yeah, moving on to other things. So we have Distrelus that John's been working on. I think that the main items here are like making sure our existing tests, like docs tests, work with Distrelus. But yeah, I know a lot of work has already been done here, like on the test and release side too. So we also have proxy config. So the actual stuff didn't land in 112. So for 113, we should be able to have more fields in the proxy config API because we only lifted like 2 really uncontroversial fields for 112. And then potentially making it so that more fields are like live reloadable in proxy config. So instead of relying on the field being set at injection time, you can change it in the CR, and then through proxy config discovery service, it'll automatically change in the proxy. So then we have mesh config cleanup. This has been driven by Costin. This is also kind of a cross working group thing because it relies on other working groups to move stuff out of mesh config into their own specific APIs. And there's also talk of like a dedicated CR for mesh config, but maybe we won't need that, and we can just rely on other working groups CRs to clean it up. And then also Costin has been working on injection list support. And I'm fairly confident that won't like land in 113, but yeah, it's something that's being worked on.
So for the mesh config stuff, I think it'd be really useful if we could publish some sort of longer term roadmap on kind of what the pieces are that are going to move out, you know, and which working groups own them, and make sure that those end up on those working groups roadmaps. Like I think we have it kind of implicitly in a bunch of places, but it'd be good to actually write that up as a doc. I don't know, Austin, if you already have that somewhere.
I can work on something. It's, you know, telemetry security. I mean, they know the guilty one.
Yeah, but I think it'd be good to just make sure, you know, we're sort of publicizing that at the TOC level.
Yep.
So people know when to expect those things to be happening. That'd be good. It doesn't have to be long, just like, yeah, short doc with kind of the roadmap.
Yeah, we'll do that. I have a very large document with all the fields, and you know, we went over it.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Summary.
Yeah, a summary would be good.
Okay, yeah, that's everything we had planned for 113. Are there any other questions or clarifications? Yeah.
So my same question, I guess, with networking, which is, you know, what are the things we're not doing? What are the things that are on the future?
We are not deprecating operator, even if we want very hard. We are still keeping it alive.
By operator, you mean the in-cluster
in-cluster installer. Yeah. The fourth way to install this.
And it's beta, right? And it was the preferred way until 2 releases ago.
Istio Cattle was always a preferred way, not in-cluster controller, I think.
When he says operator, he means the controller.
I understand. Yeah, but
I don't think that was ever preferred, was it?
So prefer. I think we're getting caught up on the word here. Whatever we recommend is one thing, but we had data that surprised us when we saw how much the in-cluster operator was used. And I believe that was from 2 releases ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a third, right? Or is it more than that?
Yeah, about a third. But
and that's one of the reasons we are not killing it.
Yes.
I know, and I think again, I understand Istio CTL was maybe the most recommended way, but back then when in-cluster operator was being worked on, we were projecting that is the direction where the community is going, right? And that's why folks moved to it, and it was theoretically a better experience. So I don't know how we're going to back out of this so easily.
That's why I think we're not backing out. We're just saying that it's not recommended. And I don't think our docs ever said it, although I spoke to a number of people. Then I asked them why they're using it, and they said the docs recommended it. And I asked them to point to it where it recommends it, and there was like confusion on what the recommendation is. So even though we didn't think we were recommending it, I think that users thought we were.
But Niraj, the strategy right now is to not deprecate anything that we launch. Everything that we launch will support it forever. I mean, we pay for our mistakes, and forever we'll pay. But Helm experience is so much better, especially with the remote repository. Basically, you don't have to download anything. You just run 2 commands and you have Istio running. And I think people will naturally migrate to this because it's, you know, simply better and easier. And we started with Helm. We finished with Helm.
Start with Helm, deprecate Helm.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever deprecated Helm. We just kind of, you know, have other ways that we tried.
Yeah, once we have the new gateway stuff as well, I think the install method will be less important, hopefully. Because if you're just installing one deployment, Istio-D, how you install it really doesn't matter. Like, people are perfectly fine installing the Istio operator, and installing Istio-D is just as hard as installing the Istio operator. So, I mean, it is important, but it hopefully is less important, especially compared to where we were, a year and a half ago, where we had like 14 deployments.
And one more thing I want to point out in this, the reason install was so important was because all the options in mesh config, proxy config, because you have to reinstall to change anything. Now that we're moving proxy config to CRD and part of mesh config is more or less auto, runtime. You don't have to set it at install time. It's basically you just install and then you modify CRs, which is pretty natural. You don't have to rerun install every time you change an option.
I totally see why we want users to move to Helm from the operator model. I just hope that we can encourage them to move with the carrot rather than the stick. There was a P0 bug in the 1.12 release regarding the in-cluster operator because of lack of test coverage. So I hope that we're not de-emphasizing that to the point of making it a even worse user experience in order to get users to move to Helm. Does that make sense?
It's already been that way, though. We've had so many critical bugs in the operator that haven't been fixed ever. And like, I don't think that we should invest effort into fixing these when it's not the path forward. Obviously, we shouldn't break it intentionally, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of work that would be needed to get it to a stable quality.
And the best way to not destabilize it is to not touch it unless there is a CVE. It's the way it works. It's stable. People are happy with it more or less. The more you touch it, the more you break it.
I will have to say, I mean, it's a bizarre place where we are, right? So Istio CTL is the preferred way, and that has been stable. I like. The other most stable thing is in-cluster operator, which is beta, but it has bugs we don't fix and we don't want to support. And Helm has been lying around with experimental alpha for more than a year, right? So basically, we have just one way to install.
Well, Helm has been one install method since 1.0. I mean, so Helm charts have been published from 1.0, from 0.2 to now. It was not documented, but as an install method, it's what Istio Cutter is using underneath. So it's not really, what is alpha and experimental is the new repositories and the simplified version of Helm. But Helm itself, all other methods we use Helm underneath.
And we actively went and removed Helm in 2 or 3 releases, right?
That was a mistake. That was a mistake, but it was, again,
so
the enthusiasm.
We can't make users pay for these mistakes.
Yeah, that's where I'm going, right?
If the goal is that, installing istiod, like, kubectl apply istiod.yaml is sufficient to do an install, then what would prevent the operator from just carrying forward with that, right? Like, the operator itself should get simpler, correct?
Assuming we have people to work on operators or to work on the other ways, but it's, we cannot do everything with the people we have and the time we have, and especially knowing that operator is, flawed in different ways. Very high permissions, a lot of other things that.
So, I mean, I think, we can fix obvious bugs in the operator. Right, we don't have to, right? We can fix P0 bugs in the operator. We don't have to recommend it, right? But we can't get rid of it. I think we have consensus about that.
Yep.
So,
Neeraj, I guess the question for you is, are you asking, suggesting that we try to do more?
No, I'm not saying let's do more, but I am trying to contemplate why is operator so hard if everything else is simple.
Well, as Custom mentioned, operator requires privilege.
That's a security issue, but in implementation, I'm guessing it's not a complexity, right?
Oh, no, I mean, it has to run as something. That is implementation complexity.
Sure, yeah, but okay. Still needs to do all the old stuff. Interesting. Old as in till what release are you talking about, John?
I assume essentially forever, unless we want to deprecate things. But My personal opinion is that we've changed so much in install that it's better to not remove stuff, even if it makes things harder.
So John, didn't know our operator only support a given release? Like
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
not
but we
like
can't
we're
change the
supporting
API.
older one.
We
You
can't
need to
change
be able to upgrade.
But the API, isn't that the same API as what you use to Istio Cuddle though? Because
Yeah.
Yes, that's also problematic. Because
That's
the
why-
API hasn't evolved with the new reality that there's only one deployment, right? It's still the same API as when we had, 10 different deployments.
I think one thing that is not very clear in this discussion is that the new Helm is actually has a different API than Istio Cuddle and Operator and everything. So basically, when you install, you have a much smaller set of features because it takes into account that a lot of things move into proxy config is moving to CRD. It's a simplified. Gateways are out. So it's a simpler API, but when you move to Helm to the new Helm v3, you need to start from scratch with the clean API. And that's why it's easier to maintain and to support and to upgrade.
So I think one thing which looks like we should test the waters on, right, is that even though operator has been marked as beta, we are clearly not paying the kind of attention that we should pay to a beta API. At which point, if we send out like clear notification that now we are going to deprecate it, if we hear a lot from the customer saying that like don't do it, then that's a good signal. However, if we hear from the customer, okay, deprecate it, here is the reason why, and in favor of this, and if the community is okay with it, then and I think if we don't do anything, it looks like that's where we are, because we're not really fully supporting it anyway. Right, and I think that that would be a good time to point them to the alternatives of the new pure Helm templates if we want to leapfrog Istio Cuddle. But
well, I think the point here, Mandar, is no matter what we do, we have to handhold the user, right? It can't be go and redo things right by hand, right? They need some conversion, right? They may be willing to move to Helm, but they're not willing to move to Helm, right, without help, right? And that help had better be clear, right? Like,
yep,
Istio Cuddle migrate to Helm, right? If that's what we would prefer, because we can't deprecate without doing that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I don't think that we should deprecate it because, first of all, deprecation I think is this like dirty word that scares people. And if we say like, oh, it's deprecated, but we're not going to remove it for 2 years, that nuance will not be understood. That's almost certain. And I feel like we've done so much churn in this area that we've kind of used up our churn budget for the next maybe 2 years, such that any change, even a good change, is almost not good, right? People will say like, what is wrong with Istio? They can't get their act together and figure out like what to do with install. They keep changing every other release. I would rather have, if you're using the operator, fine, keep using the operator. We probably shouldn't be a new user that's deciding for the first time. If you picked operator, then we did something wrong. But I don't think there's any desire to, push people away from the operator that are already on it and cause more churn.
And at the same time, we don't necessarily want to improve it too much. I mean, to change the experience to make improvement, because that will actually create danger for people who are actually using it currently. So they will have to make changes. So keep it stable. Fix P0s seems like the safest thing.
I think what I'd like to see is some investment on the testing side, so that like some of the recent regressions that we've seen are checked for, and we're sure that they're not happening again in future releases. That shouldn't involve any risk to the operator's stability for users.
I think custom. That's the Mitch is enumerating the price of what you're suggesting. Which, if we all agree we don't want to progress, but we definitely don't want to regress, then we do need testing.
As a reminder, it is beta, so it has all the testing that it needs for beta. It was
well, if it regressed, then it doesn't.
Well,
by definition, there's a bug that needs to be fixed. Okay, so Neeraj, I guess separate from end user feedback, it sounds like Solo is using operator as part of its operational practice.
Kind of. I'm just more curious about where the community is heading, because I have had users say, hey, we were using operator and now it looks like operator is not the direction. And I think who mentioned this? John? Like, we have burned users so much here. I just don't know if the end result will be good.
Yeah, I mean, Costin, I think we have to do better than just we'll take community fixes, right? We have to be a bit more proactive than that.
But at the same time, right, the statement is still correct that operator is not the direction. So we don't want people to make kind of more long-term investments, our users to make long-term investments on the operator when we know that that is not the direction. So if a customer says that to you, I think that is correct. Yeah, I think all we're saying is, yeah, the existing stuff won't break, but don't start using new features.
And frankly, it sounds like the way to signal that to users is with deprecation. If we say this is deprecated and slated for removal in, I don't know, 1.20, something sufficiently far out.
But it is not. I mean, we believe we can maintain it as a current state for a very long time, and it's not harmful to keep it. And I agree with John. I mean, there is no reason to deprecate it if we can keep it at the current state.
So how do we signal to new users that they shouldn't adopt this, while signaling to existing users that they can expect the full support of a beta feature in Istio?
The documentation, I think, is pretty good in 1.12. It basically says this feature is not good. Don't use it if you're not already using it. Let me see. It says use of the operator for new installations is discouraged. The operator will continue to be supported. New features will not be prioritized.
Right, it just doesn't use the magic word deprecated.
Yes.
And it's entirely accurate.
Yeah, that is accurate.
One thing I mentioned a few times, and I'm not sure if it's, so just like with releases, we need some people to, do this work if we believe it's important. So it's not happen by magic, and we need, POC or someone to assign to find resources, to assign them, and nothing is free. And if, for example, Neeraj believes that operator is important and customers are using it, then it is a priority to find some Swiss to work on it.
Yeah, that is the role of the working group leads meeting, right? To triage and force trade around staffing for, right? So, I mean, if we see P0 bugs in the operator, right, and it's not deprecated and it's a beta API, then we have to fix them. And we can go in an arm wrestle about that in the working group leads meeting. But directionally, I think it sounds like we're all pretty much aligned. There is no deprecation. Istio Cuttle install or Helm will be the recommended options. We may provide tooling to help users convert from one to the other. Like, they can already use Istio Cuttle with basically the same configuration. So the question would be, do we provide tooling to help users migrate to Helm, or is it even worth it, right? Because there were codification of the other API options anyway in proxy config and mesh config. And so this will all just wash out in the end. But if we end up 18 months from now and 50% of the users are still using the operator, then either we did a bad job with messaging, or we did a bad job with API, or the bad job with the docs. And then we'll have to go and tackle that more directly. Okay, we probably spent a bit too much time on this.
Yeah,
Plus we're
I
out
think
of time.
we're 8 minutes over.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah, thanks for the presentations. Thanks, Sam.
Good discussion. See y'all later.
Okay.